be remembered for passion and enthusiasm.
Australian crocodile hunter Steve Irwin has died.
The stingray suddenly lunged its long, sharp tail upwards.
Crocodile hunter was killed during the underwater filming of...
To get him to a hospital, he wouldn't have survived.
Today the world has lost a great wildlife icon.
We lost an Australian icon.
Steve Irwin has died.
Off a stingray's tail.
He was called the Crocodile Whisperer. His name was synonymous with nature, charisma, and fortitude. Ironically, despite Steve Irwin's perception of stingrays as safe animals to approach, he was killed in a brutal attack by a giant stingray. On that ill-fated day of September 2006, while filming a video on the Great Barrier Reef for a children's series, Irwin focused a bit too much on a giant stingray, which unleashed a ferocious and aggressive attack, battering Irwin's thoracic wall and heart with its razor-sharp barb. While the crew filmed on, the stingray continued to puncture holes in Steve's heart, leaving the crocodile hunter floating in a pool of blood. He was later rushed to the emergency room, but the doctors couldn't save him from his fate. He was too far gone, and for what? What gives the whole episode further sense of foreshadowing is how Irwin gave a chilling speech before diving into the water. Did he know he was going to die? Crocodile hunter, crocodile whisperer. Steve Irwin's been called by many names. He was much loved both by family and nature lovers all over the world. His documentaries and nature shows have been featured on Discovery, Nat Geo, and almost every possible major nature channel in the world. Steve was a man who could feed crocodiles like he was feeding puppies. He was a wildlife expert, conservationist, and a zookeeper. All he wanted was to be among animals because he loved them. So it came as no surprise when his death sent shockwaves across the globe. It was so unexpected and bizarre. Had it been by a crocodile, people would have understood, but to be pierced and gored to death by a stingray? I mean, he was a man whose expertise with such animals was unquestionable, which is why his death was freaky, almost unreal. How could such a thing have happened? And yet many of his team members have reported something amiss. Steve wasn't really himself even before the shoot. Steve Irwin was born into a family that loved animals and most naturally did the same. His obsession with animals and wildlife turned into a career. He was the real thing, a regular animal whisperer who understood them. He somehow had this knack of knowing how to handle them. His father, Bob, was a wildlife expert who specialized in reptiles and amphibians. His mother, Lynn, was a wildlife rehabilitator who opened a small Queensland park for reptiles. When Steve was just 6 years old, his first wildlife pet was a 12-foot scrub python whom he adored. By the time he was 9 years old, he was already handling crocodiles, and once his father even allowed him to wrestle one, under supervision, of course. In 1991, he took over the reins of Beer Wild Reptile and Fauna Park from his parents and renamed it the Australia Zoo. His documentaries were lapped up by nature channels and soon became a regular feature on Nat Geo and Discovery. He soon gained celebrity status from his popular series The Crocodile Hunter, which aired from 1997 to 2004. His family, consisting of wife Terry Raines and children son Robert and daughter Bindi, shared his passion for animals, and together they chalked up a 10-year plan for the Australia Zoo. Steve Irwin's day of reckoning came when he set off with a team that involved producer John Staton, Philip E. Cousteau Jr., and cameraman Justin Lyons to film Ocean's Deadliest and Queensland's Bat Reef. Months later, after his death, Staton revealed a chilling moment when Steve gave a fiery speech to his crew. He sounded weird, as if he was delivering his own finale. It was as if he had some premonition that this would be his last trip. It wasn't just Steve. Even Staton had a sense of foreshadowing and wanted to stop the production based on his intuition, but Discovery Channel refused since they had already paid for the filming. Staton even prepared his own will, but strangely it wasn't him that would pass on, it was going to be Steve. It was the morning of September 4th when Steve and his team members were scouting for shooting opportunities off the coast of Port Douglas. There was bad weather and nothing in sight. That put a damper on the entire team. Lyon recalled how Steve seemed completely out of place and restless, not being able to do what he loved the most. There was no point going on with the shoot when there was not even a shark in sight. It was then that Steve thought they might as well do something else. He remembered he needed to make a video for his daughter Bindi and thought why not seize the opportunity. There were no tiger sharks around, so Lyon remembered Steve saying, "Let's go do something." So they all jumped into a dinghy searching for something to do. There were no tiger sharks around, so the next best thing was a stingray. Steve had encountered several stingrays in his life, so obviously photographing an episode with one would be routine. He spotted quite a big one. It turned out to be a giant, almost 8 feet wide, and by most standards, That is indeed huge. It was the perfect specimen, and as experience had taught them, the team with Steve in the lead got ready to shoot in chest-deep water. They would try and get as close as possible. Stingrays aren't as deadly as they were made out to be. They aren't dangerous. Sure, they have these stingers all over their bodies and a long barb that could send you 6 feet under, but they don't always use them. Stingrays are usually shy creatures who will swim away the moment you approach them or hide beneath the sand. It was supposed to be a regular scene as always. Justin and Steve were shooting around the stingray, which had come between them. Things were going so well that they thought they would take one last shot. Steve would swim towards the camera, while Justin would film the creature swimming away. Suddenly, to his horror, Justin saw the stingray raise its tail and lash out at the crocodile hunter. It seemed Steve had gotten too close for the creature's comfort. Justin was in a quandary. Should he help Steve or should he continue on filming? The stingray struck again and again. It pierced Steve, who was now in grave danger. But the team witnessing the tragedy unfold before them explained how Irwin had instructed them no matter what happens, they were always to keep on filming. Irwin had given precise instructions to Tommy Donovan and Lyons always be filming. It didn't matter if he lived or died, if he was in danger or not, it appeared Steve Irwin had always wanted a video of his death. Within moments, the stingray had stabbed Steve multiple times. Lyons described how the stingray's barbs kept going through Steve like a hot knife through butter. Steve was soon standing, almost collapsing in a pool of blood. He screamed, "It punctured my lung." But Lyons, looking at Steve, feared it was worse, much worse. He could see a huge gash over Steve's heart from which blood kept gushing out. By now, he knew he had to take action. Lyons swam up to Steve and helped him towards the dinghy where the team dragged him aboard. All the while, Lyons was imploring Steve, "Hang in there. Think of your kid, Steve. Hang on, hang on, hang on." Lyons described later, even if we had been able to get him into an emergency ward at that moment, we probably wouldn't have been able to save him because the damage to his heart was massive. Steve Irwin knew he was gone. He looked up calmly at Justin Lyon and whispered, "I'm dying." Those were the last words of Steve Irwin. When the team got back to the main boat, Lyons tried performing CPR on Steve, but it was no use. When medics finally got to Steve, they took one look at him and pronounced him dead. It was the end of the crocodile hunter. When the news broke to his family, they were inconsolable. His son Robert was just 2. His daughter was just 8 years old and commented later, "It's like losing part of your heart, and when you lost that, you never get it back." There was a huge debate in the aftermath surrounding Steve Irwin's death. Some animal experts felt he behaved irresponsibly, but Lyons insisted no, that was just not true, especially not with Steve. He knew everything there was to know about animals, and just before the accident, he was explaining to the team the dangers of a stingray's tail. It was nothing more than just a freakish, bizarre accident. But what do you think? Do we really need documentaries that require humans venturing into such dangerous proximity with deadly animals, knowing there is a risk to life? Should animals be left alone? Because after all, if Irwin was not to blame, then neither was the stingray. It might have just perceived Steve as a threat. Even then, too, it reacted unlike its normal behavior. Steve Irwin's death is a big question. Did he really need to die?